Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Lisa Bogue, and I'm here today to talk with you about how working in the Akashic Record can be helpful for anxiety and also physical health issues. So, of course, the Akashic Record is not the first thing we think about when we think about how can I heal either my body or my mind, right? But that being said, if you look at anxiety, for instance, currently we have so many resources available, right? We have all kinds of meditations and all kinds of apps and all kinds of books and all kinds of people who teach about it. And yet we still have more anxiety than ever. So for me, then I think, okay, well, we're missing something. We're missing something really important, right? Same thing with physical health, right? I mean, all of us don't have access to the cutting edge medical approaches, but some people do, and everybody still has crappy health, right? There's all kinds of physical health issues that are no better than they've ever been. So, once again, what are we not understanding? And if we think of it from the point of view of the body that came into this incarnation, the body knows everything it needs to be healthy. The body functions autonomously, right? And yet our bodies are not functioning so well. So what is going on, right? What are we doing to them? So our tendency in both these situations is to pathologize ourselves, right? To say there's something wrong with my body, or there's something wrong with me, or what I'm doing, or what I'm not doing, the thing I'm eating, the thing I'm not eating. When it comes to anxiety, we tend to think there's something wrong with us, something like we have a disorder, or there's something wrong with the way that we think about things. Something wrong with who we are is usually where it ends up, right? So personally, I've always held this question of, okay, so what are we missing? Like what are we not getting that would actually allow us to heal, meaning to step into our birthright, which is to feel good, to feel well, right? To function well, to have bodies that are healthy and minds that are healthy and not afraid. So I went looking for the answers to this initially by going to medical school. I thought, well, I will learn there how we can be healthy, how we can be happy and healthy and whole, right? And that's not really what I found there, right? Um, it's more a study of illness and approaches to illness, but not so much a discussion of how can we actually heal? How can we transcend the illness altogether, right? So then I had noticed that the mind and the emotions affect what goes on in the body. So I thought, okay, well, I'll train in psychiatry. I will learn there. And psychiatry, similarly, I mean, a lot of psychiatry is more just about treating illness. Um, there are, of course, psychiatrists who practice psychotherapy who are trying to get at like how do our thoughts and our emotions influence what goes on in our experience and in the body. And so I trained to do that. And that was good. I mean, you can make a lot of shifts just by talking things through. You really can. I also noticed, though, that there were certain things that you could talk around and around and around that didn't really shift. So I was going, like, what is going on with that? And then one weekend, I was at a wedding. And while I was at this wedding, was walking around a shopping area nearby, and I found a book. And the book was written by a man who taught about indigenous healing in South America. His name is Alberto Villoldo. And so I went to his training, and he talked about how beyond the body and then the mind and the emotions, we have the soul and the spirit. And that when we can consider the soul and the spirit in healing, it changes the whole thing. And there are ways to do that. And so the Akashic Record, I think, is another way to do that. So indigenous healers have ways of addressing those things at the level of the soul and at the level of the spirit. right? And the Akashic Record also has ways of doing that. So when we look in the Akashic Record at, say, a physical ailment or something that we're really anxious about, then we can get different kinds of information. So one kind of information is about the soul's journey, right? And how, so for instance, say you have a phobia of drowning. A lot of times, a phobia is actually something that happened in a past lifetime, right? So if you have a phobia of drowning, you're terrified of water, and there's no reason in this lifetime, it could be that you drowned in another lifetime, right? So there's a really simple explanation for the phobia, for the fear, right? But it's not an explanation that we come across in our usual way of approaching anxiety, right? So we have then in the Akashic Record this lens of the soul's history and what it is that we're holding on to in this lifetime as fear or as illness that actually comes from the past. In addition to that, we have this lens of what is being passed through our genetic and ancestral lineage. So there are things that come through the lineage as well that affect us currently that again, we're not going to solve with a pill in this lifetime. Like we need to look back and see what that history has been. So there are things in the ancestral line as well. And then the third lens that's really helpful that we can address in the Akashic Record is the lens of the collective, because some things are collective issues. They're not about you or this lifetime, right? So, for instance, if you think about the suppression of the divine feminine, right? The witch trials and the way that women who were connected to their intuition or their power were treated. A lot of women, especially light worker kinds of women, have wounds around that, right? And it's not your issue so much. I mean, you're carrying a piece of it, but the issue is a collective issue. It's a thing that happened to humanity, right? And specifically to women at the time, but we've all been women, we've all been men. So it's not even just women, it's everybody, right? We have these wounds about holding on to our intuition and our power and really living in that and living through that, right? So that's an example of a collective wound that affects everybody. So these are things that we can see in the Akashic Record that we don't see in our usual approach to anxiety or health issues, right? Another way of looking at these things is, so if you look at the history of the soul, you have this like a timeline of incarnations and things that have happened in those incarnations, right? Another way of thinking of it is that anything that's not healed in all of those stories, all those incarnations, then becomes lodged in the energy field. It becomes lodged in the body, which is why we then develop physical health issues. So we can also look at that cross-sectionally in the Akashic Record and look at what's going on in the energy field, right? What's going on in the body that's about stuck energy from this past experience. So those are two ways that we can look at things and heal, shift them in the Akashic Record. And then another way that's happening a lot more recently is to just transcend the energy of them, right? To just to hold such a high vibration of love and light that we just shift out of the dimension of those old things, those old wounds, right? So rather than it being a thing that's wrong with me that I have to fix, it's just a thing that lives in a very low vibration that I don't live in anymore. So we can just directly transcend some of those old patterns. So a bunch of ways in the Akashic Record that we can approach problems with our physical health and problems with our mental health, specifically anxiety. So it just gives us a lot more lenses to work with, and then also a lot more techniques to work with to shift our experience and to shift it more fundamentally than we do by trying to think different thoughts. Because trying to think different thoughts, it just doesn't really shift things at that fundamental level. And it's never going to change an experience from a past life where you drowned, right? You just need to know that that's what that was and clear the energy of that. So all kinds of cool and fun and amazing and really life-changing things that you can do in the Akashic Record that can heal from some of those things. So, if you're interested in knowing more, next week I'll be live again on Tuesday evening and we will talk about relationships and we'll talk about um, how working in the record can help us with relationships, questions that we can ask, and different lenses that we have or ways we can understand that. And then the following week, we'll be talking about soul purpose. Again, Tuesday evening, same time. Following all of that, starting October 7th, I'll be teaching a course to teach people to open their Akashic record. There's this beautiful prayer system that I learned from Lisa Barnett, and I'll be teaching that prayer system. So ways to open your record, and then we'll do lots and lots of practice so that you get really comfortable at doing it. And then in the winter, I'll be teaching course 2, which is will teach you how to do some of these healing techniques, how to shift out of the energy of some of these patterns. So I hope that you will join us. Um, in the comments here, I'll put a link to register for the webinars for the next couple of weeks. If you want to join us after the live and participate in a Q&A where we ask all kinds of questions and we can do some healing work. And then I'll also have a free gift for you each week as well. So I'll put the link to register for that. And then I'll also put the link for course 1 starting October 7th if you're curious about that. And if you have any questions, then feel free to DM me or email me. And yeah, I'd love to have you. Take care. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.